Welcome back to the next episode of Building a Chopper. I've always been interested in sheet metal work. I've been doing it since I was, I don't know, 14-year-old kid. I was doing customizing on cars and bikes, making tanks, flaring guards. When the panel van craze was hot, I was chopping up brand new Holdens and flaring the guards and putting Statesman fronts on them, and I wasn't even old enough to drive a car, and they let me chop up their brand new cars. It was pretty crazy. So this episode, I'm going to show you some basics on what I do with sheet metal work. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who do sheet metal work. They've got some tips. If you've got better tips than I've got, please share them around. This is a big, a whole industry, and there's a lot of guys interested in it. So any sheet metal working tips you've got for making tanks or fenders or stuff like that, we'd sure like to see them in the comments. So I'll give you a few basic tips on how I do things. You might not agree. If you don't, please share your comment. I'm basically self-taught, but I've got a lot of friends around the world who do sheet metal work. A lot of it is done on custom cars and hot rods, but just as much is done on motorcycles. I do stuff like this. This is a fender I'm making for a guy. It's been extended 8 inches. I've also got another bike there. I'm riding the rear fender on 70 millimeters. So it's a real big fender. So I'm just going to go through. First of all, I'm going to show you how I make my patterns. Then we'll go into some basic metal work. Fuel tank, mudguard, and oil tank. I'll show you how I make those panels and how we make the patterns. So I just usually make everything out of cardboard first, because you can get it wrong on cardboard and fix it really easily, and you don't want to get it wrong on the steel especially when you almost finish the piece. So this is about, I don't know, 1 mil cardboard. The width, this is the widest piece. We're going to make this fuel tank in one piece. The top in one piece, sorry. The bottom will be a separate piece. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to fold this in half. So because this is such a complex shape, I'm going to get some thinner paper, lay that on first, do the final trim on this. So we'll get a center line on the tank. Okay, so because I'm going to make it a bit short, I'll just make the pattern go to here. Now this is going to come around to the front here. I'm going to actually make the tank that inch shorter there. So now we've got all the metal coming up into the middle here. So it'll have to be shrunk there. So we can put a fold in there. That metal is actually wrapping around there and rolling back. So this piece of metal is flat, rolls up. It's a bit like origami. So I'm just going to keep messing with this till I get a reasonable shape out of it. Now the gas cap's going to be up here. So I'm going to try, and any shrinking of the metal I do, I'm going to bring it towards the gas cap. This is probably one of the hardest bits, doing the pattern. If you got the pattern right. So there we have the metal joining there. We can take another slice out of here. So we've got the metal joining together here. We've still got a bit too much metal up the top here. I think what I'll do, I'll make this part and then I'll shrink. I'll show you how we'll shrink that little piece there. This here will need a few shrinks too, but we've got enough metal there. So now we'll transfer this to the paper. Now because we're making the tank shorter, we're going to move it down to here. So that'll make the length of the tank shorter. We'll go to there. So up here, I'm not too worried about, because that's where the filler cap's going to be. So I think we'll just go straight down to there. That'll be the length of the tank there, like that. And we're making the tank narrow. That's the old center line. So I'm going to make it about, I'll take about ½ an inch off that. The tank's going to be about that much shorter and about 1 inch narrower. So you can see how much shorter it's going to be. This piece is going to wrap right round into there. So what I'll do now is I'll double it up onto this. We went and saw the Patched movie the other night, Red Carpet. Alex's music's in the beginning of the film. It's a bit close to home with all the laws and stuff that were happening here in Australia. I wonder if they did that much cutting in the movie. Big shout out to Spider for inviting us along to the red carpet, using a few of my quotes in the movie. There's our petrol tank, believe it or not. So you get back to the petrol tank. I'm not going to have that big hump in this, so I'm going to mark where this fold roughly is. So we're roughly going to put a fold through, well, not roughly, we're going to put a fold through here, down to nothing. So then we can almost fold that on that line, or roll it, roll this side. So I'll be cutting that out of probably 1.5 cold rolled steel. Cold rolled steel's better to work with. It's already annealed and it's a lot softer to work with. So that's our tank pattern. Next step will be to cut that out. So the other piece we're going to do is pretty simple. It's just going to be the mudguard. So let's get I only want to make it to about here, and I might put a rolled edge on it. So I'll show you how I do that too. So we're talking about, we'll take it to 240. Make it 240 wide there, and yeah, that's about 160 wide. So we'll go to 240. I'll cut a strip of 240. I'm just going to cut a strip of 240 and make the whole fender. So I'll cut that, and then we'll come back and I'll show you some shrinking tips. For the straight cuts, luckily we've got the guillotine, and for the curved cuts, I've got metal shears there. So let's cut this tank pattern out. Good thing about the guillotine is you've only got to mark each end. You know it's going to be a straight cut. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this episode. We don't make any money out of this show at all. It's all privately funded, coming in our pockets. The only way we can fund it is by selling merch. If you shoot over to my website, I've got a lot of stuff for sale. I've got t-shirts, I've got a few new designs coming out shortly. There's the original paintings from Live to Ride. Now all these have been published. Hey, and if you want me to do a personal piece of artwork for you or a friend, get in touch, drop me a line in the messages. It'll be a great Christmas present for someone. Thanks for your support. Back to the episode. Okay, we've cut that. The next step will be obviously shaping it, but before I shape it, I want to do a bit of shrinking. I'll show you how we go about shrinking metal. There's a couple of different ways. I'll show you three or four different ways. Probably before I shrink it, I'll be putting, I'm thinking about putting a crease down the center of the tank to give it a kick, and we'll be rolling these edges slightly just so we know where we are going to shrink and stretch. So I'll cut the rear fender now. I'll cut the piece of the rear fender, and then we'll show you some shrinking and stretching. Okay, so we've got the metal made. We've got to turn it, get that shape out of it. So about 1.5 inches around here, we've got to make this curl that way, but we've also got to make it curve that way. So what we do, we're going to curve the edges, we're going to shrink the edges, and we're going to stretch the middle. So I've got a shrinker here. I'll show you just how we shrink the edges. We'll do a bit of shrinking with that, then we'll do some other styles of shrinking. So because it's got to be 30mm in, I just go all the way in on the jaws first for the first part. So all the way in on the jaws. That's actually gathering all the metal together. So I'll do both sides. and then we'll go halfway in. You can see it pulling the metal in there pretty drastically. Okay, so you might not have a shrink or a stretcher, but you've got an oxy torch. So when you heat metal, it expands, and as it cools, it shrinks. And the quicker you cool it, the more it'll shrink. So what we can also do to shrink is heat the edge. And then put it over a shape, the good old trolley handle. Push the metal into the center. And hammer it flat. So we've got a pucker here, let's heat that. Go in a fair way because we've got to roll the 30mm around. So let's take that pucker out. Come up to the next pucker. Now I'll push the metal into the middle. See the pucker? I'm getting a similar effect as the shrinker. You can speed the process up by using a damp rag too. That cools the metal quickly and shrinks it. Okay, you might be as lucky as I to have a Pullmax machine, but the Pullmax machine also you can do shrinking on. This is called thumbnail shrinking die. So as the metal goes in, I'll just give you a demonstration. It'll gather it, and as you pull it out, it goes between the two flat pieces and flattens it out again. The die is pushing it up and making a pucker, and as we pull it back out of the die, it's flattening it again. So you're getting a pretty radical shrinking action there. So you can see how much that has rolled it around and gathered the metal. So we'll do the last bit of the mudguard with that. Okay, so there's 3 ways we can make a mudguard. Next we'll be stretching the middle, and once we've stretched the middle, it'll give more of a dome, and then we'll come through and use some finishing dyes to finish the edges. And I think I might put a bead down the center, and I think I'll do the same with the fuel tank. I'll put a bead down the center of the fuel tank to match, so they're matching. I've got a couple of different widths there, so we'll look at that next episode. Any questions or comments? If you know how to do it quicker or better, please comment. Next episode, we're going to do some shaping on the sides of the tank. So instead of coming straight down, they'll balloon out, but not exaggerated. When you put a crown in metal and you weld it, the crown will keep going in the one direction. If the metal's dead flat and starts to warp, it'll go up and down, up and down. But if you've got a crown in your metal while you're welding, the crown will stay in, and then you can just hammer it or finish your weld. Don't forget to like, subscribe. We'll see you next week with more on the Backguard petrol tank, and don't forget to check out the store.